Thank you, 70 Squadron, for opening the Royal Air Force Cosford Airshow 2016 with that fly-through from the A400 Atlas. Basic idea of the A400 is that although the C-130 is an excellent 4 miles out, now they'll be tonking along with the poor old King Air doing probably a maximum speed of 220 knots. They'll be going like the clappers, and the Reds will be going as slowly as they possibly can. Of course, they're the world, and here they are, coming in from our right, Red Arrows and the King Air. Well, thanks, Reds. Thanks, King Air. Let's just see how they're going to break. Sergeant Gareth Johnson,
who's 18.
And the third aircraft is being flown by Flight Lieutenant Chris Ninja Turtle, Turtle, Cadet Warrant Officer Anthony Sedula.
Fantastic. Everybody wave. All the air cadets wave. Everybody wave.
I deeply suspect today they will never forget.
A wonderful time. It's so magnificent.
Well done. Isn't that great?
And they just love it. I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of what we do is about aviation, but it's also about adventure and just fantastic training and all sorts of different things, and bands and drill and just wonderful stuff.
To underline what you're saying,
It's good at that. Oh yeah, I like it when it goes. design, which is the squadron emblem of the first wing of the Belgian Air Component. I'm just going to let you look at that lovely picture on this side of the aircraft. I'm just going to let you look at the other side. He said, I'm sorry, we've come in our absolutely standard colours this week. The reason, of course, is because these aircraft aren't just sitting around waiting for something to happen. Oh, there's the other side that's the same colour. The reason isn't that they leave a nicely Yeah, and there's the other side again, thanks. Obviously these are operational aircraft. The paint job, as it were, that's actually in France at the moment, helping out there. In fact, this whole squadron was on operations in Mali in 2013 doing medevac for the French operations there. That's a very nice spiral taxi. It's going to be... check you can all see him. Now, it's a helicopter. He's definitely not going to be able to hear you applaud, but they will see you applaud. And in gratitude for that, I was expecting a bow there. Yep, and there it goes. Well, thank you very much, Captain Kevin Beckers, ex-Belgian Air Cadet, and co-pilot Captain Stein Servants. Pete, wasn't that absolutely great?
It's an awesome machine, isn't it? It just looks beautiful and performs even as well as it looks, really. I love it. And thank you very much indeed to the Belgian Air Force for coming to Cosford today. That's fantastic. Thank you for your time on that one too, Jonathan. Well, here in the commentary tower... Mark 2C. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that there's no red in the roundels. The reason is this is representing an aircraft of the Southeast Asia Air Command that would have been fighting against the Japanese in Burma. So a few friendly fire incidents that people saw the red in the RAF roundel and a few RAF aircraft were shot down. And this particular aircraft is in the colours of Flight Lieutenant Jimmy Whalen, who was a Rhodesian or Zimbabwean, and he was killed in action supporting the 14th Army in the battles around Kohima. That most of the German aircraft in the Battle of Britain film were ex-Spanish Air Force, and these two are no exception. We'll talk about them in a moment. Here they come.
This is a Booker Youngman and a Booker Youngmeister. And the aircraft in the lead, oh my goodness, they're going to make that a little bit complicated for me to observe. The current aircraft in the lead with the yellow tail, that is the Youngmeister, behind the Youngman. The Youngmeister's paint job is of a training aircraft with a 1943 flying school in Germany. And the Youngmeister paint job is a squadron leader's aircraft, LG-01 of 01, of the German aerobatic team that did aerobatics in Germany on tour and around the world as propaganda for the Nazis. They're in Axis livery, and they're going to give us a 1930s barnstorming display. Can I be terribly lazy and say the way to spot the Youngman is it looks a tiny weeny bit like a tiger moth, and the Youngmeister is a fatter aircraft altogether. The Youngman actually is tiny. It's much smaller than the tiger moth that I compared it to. So from the Polish Air Force, flew until 1990. Paint job on it is red 18 to represent Russian Soviet pilot and cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin's MiG-15. He was the first human to journey into...
Let's have a listen. How many of these aircraft were built there?
It's estimated about 3,000 supplied for the People's Liberation Army Air Force. But they also exported quite a few to countries like Albania and Bangladesh and Cambodia, North Korea, Sri Lanka as well. So they sort of exported them around the world. The pilots love to fly this because it's very sturdy, very reliable. They love its little personality.
Lovely slow roll there.
This particular aircraft was built in 1966. It was used for training and patrol duties.
Sergeant Thornton, weapon being flown for us by Squadron Leader Bailey and Flight Lieutenant Shaq Shukri. Lights are on. Honking in very nicely.
This is amazing. There's something else behind. So that could that put the helicopter. Yeah, massive, like a double decker in the sky.
Isn't that lovely? Good old Fat Albert flying through for RAF Cosford 2016.
What are you on my phone?
Aerobatic Team for 2016. It's the Red Arrows. Right now. The voice there of Red 1, Squadron Leader David Montenegro entering a right-hand turn, calling the pilots into short diamond. Now from 955 feet, you'll see the jets now collapse to around 6 feet apart as they form our trademark Diamond 9 shape in that right-hand turn. Leading the team, David Montenegro is in his second year as the team's leader. He is a former Hawk instructor, Tornado F3 pilot, and he in fact has been in the Red Arrows before from 2009 to 2011. He ended up leading the synchro pair. So over on the right, rolling out in short diamond, keep your eyes on the outriggers, Reds 4 and 5. Power pilot, stop! 4 and 5 pitch up to rapidly roll back now to be a beam Reds 8 and 9 at the back of the formation to form Apollo. At the front right of the formation is the first of our 2 new pilots. He's Red 2, Flight Lieutenant Matt Masters. Matt started his career as an instructor on the Tucano, then moved across to fly the Tornado F3. He then moved to a 100 Squadron flying the Hawk before joining the Red Arrows. Now front left you can see the Apollo shape. This was given its name back in the 1960s when NASA's Apollo mission was in full swing, and it's meant to depict the shape of the lunar landing craft from the Apollo missions. Now we put this in the display this year to celebrate an inspirational individual who in fact came back to planet Earth yesterday. He landed yesterday afternoon, having spent 6 months aboard the International Space Station. So now celebrating Major Tim Peake's achievements and Britain's newest involvement with the space program, this is Apollo. You hear Reds 2 and 3 acknowledge this next move. They do so with a very set cadence in their voices. The idea being that the pilots continue counting with their cadence in their heads, and on the count of 4 they extend their air brakes, on the count of 6 they retract their air brakes. That means they all move back at the same rate to form this shape, which depicts the delta wing platform of the Royal Air Force's multi-role combat aircraft. You saw it display here earlier. Coming in from the left with some red and white smoke, this is Typhoon. At the front left of that Typhoon wing is the next of our new pilots, who in fact did used to fly the Typhoon. He is Red 3, Flight Lieutenant Cy Taylor. Cy started off his career flying the Tornado GR4, but then moved across to the Typhoon, flying with number 3 Squadron, and then become an instructor on the Operational Conversion Unit, the squadron from which you saw the Typhoon display earlier, number 29 Reserve Squadron. Over to the right now, you'll see another shape being formed. This is getting ready for a brand new manoeuvre for 2016, which celebrates the Royal Air Force's fast jet workhorse. For 25 years now, since the start of Operation Granby in the First Gulf War, the Tornado Bomber Force from the Royal Air Force has been on near enough continuous operations, and it continues to be overseas now. Celebrating the Tornado Bomber Force, in from the right, this is Tornado. Display pilots you're watching right now have been in fact flown, or have flown the Tornado Bomber. One of them.
It's amazing!
Coming right now! This is the Twister. Hold in the base. Now tightening. Letting it out. Rolling out. Getting very dizzy over there with his red smoke on is Red 4, who's Flight Lieutenant Mike Bowden. Mike's in his second year with the team. He's a former Hawk instructor, then moved on to fly the Harrier, and then to fly the Tornado. We will now perform a nose down quick stop, proving that although the size and the weight of the aircraft, it can stop in the size of half a football field. Ladies and gentlemen, please look to the ramp. Sergeant Pratt, of Bones as he's known, will be giving you a big wave with his fluorescent hand. Please wave back, he can see you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please do give a massive wave to the guys, and particularly Bones on the ramp. And they get a real feel for the crowd. We give them just hoot and holler and wave, and they do appreciate the feedback. Just point out that isn't actually his hand. It will now demonstrate its power by climbing vertically over 800 feet. Today the Chinook Force continues to carry out UK defence missions and tasks 365 days a year, and can operate in a multitude of environments, including desert, jungle, Arctic and maritime. The aircraft will release from the left now and land like a conventional aeroplane on the runway. The crew will be working hard now as the aircraft starts to go backwards up to 25 knots. Ladies and gentlemen, the crew will now be saying goodbye the best way they know how, so please give them a big wave as we say thank you and goodbye to the 2016 Royal Air Force Chinook display team. It's been a privilege to display here today. As always, we'd like your feedback, so please log on to Facebook and Twitter and look up the @Chinook display team. We'd always welcome any comments and look forward to seeing your photos. So please. So as Peter said, you can hear the very distinctive whine sound that comes from the combination of the engine and the Fenestrom tail unit. Very, very manoeuvrable, very fast aircraft as well.
In fact, I believe that it still holds the record as being one of, if not the fastest helicopter in the world.
I believe it in its class, yeah. I believe it is still the fastest single-engine helicopter around. And for short bursts can achieve 198 miles an hour.
It's very impressive indeed. Short bursts, obviously. You're not going to go very far if you're going that fast.
But actually, the range of it as well for such a small aircraft, it's around 400 miles. So again, that puts in perspective what you can actually achieve with the aircraft. So 2.5 hours of flying on a single tank of fuel. So very, very versatile, and that explains why it's still being used extensively around the world today. Absolutely, and it's one of the few aircraft I think that all 3 services used.
What's it like to fly, Mark?
It's, would I say forgiving? No, it isn't. It can bite you, but it's a very easy aircraft to transition onto. I learnt privately, I'm not ex-military, and I learned to fly in the cavalry, and jumping out of the cavalry into an aircraft like the Gazelle became second nature very rapidly. Lovely, beautiful aircraft.
Is there a lot of sensory feedback on the stick? Is it?
Now getting airborne, the WHA 64D, it's actually out of the Westerns, they just used the 64 designation. More about the Apache to come later, but look, tailing it is an aircraft, certainly some senior members may recall, if you watched films like Who Dares Wins, then you'll know that this had quite a long connection, not just with the British Army, but of course many elements of the Special Forces as well. It's an incredibly robust machine, the Scout helicopter. We're going to see that solo later on as well. But right now you're spanning a generation, as we mentioned right at the introduction to this, of around about 50 years in actual fact. His eyes out the window. Okay, while he's doing that, of course, Matt Roberts, who is a veteran Army Air Corps pilot, and he is also still currently a reservist, interesting enough, but was an attack helicopter pilot, did fly the Apache himself, so I know there's going to be a big smile on his face because he knows many of the current Apache crews at Watersham as well. So we're going to come down into the hover now, a really good opportunity for some close-up shots of this really unique formation. I'm a huge fan, actually, of air shows in the UK of putting similar formations in the sky. It really brings across developments in technology and, of course, the daring do. I mean, the Apache is literally littered with all sorts of electronic devices, but the one alongside it, the Scout helicopter, nothing but the pilot's eyeballs. And now, you want to tell us a little bit about the rest of what the Apache might have? I know you've got a display to come here.
I do have a display to come. Actually, I actually just mentioned about these dissimilar type displays. Just a couple of weeks ago in Berlin, the Apache featured what I'd like to think is a very unique flypast, where it flew a circuit at Berlin with a Hind from the Czech Air Force, which made for a very unique sight indeed.
Well, absolutely right. So you've seen now in rearward transition, the Apache will be just returning to hold whilst Matt Roberts in the Scout will just show you the paces of this venerable old lady. A bit more powerful, of course, than the Scout, than the Sioux helicopter that sadly was not able to start a moment ago. But you hear that wonderful, very deep sound. This is the Rolls-Royce Nimbus engine that you're listening to now, not the more uprated Rolls-Royce engines of the Apache helicopter. This design you look at, that was designed in the early 60s, around about 60-61, under a company called Saunders Roe, and it's a famous name in aviation. It was eventually bought out by Westland Helicopters. Now entering into the standard pirouette, you see with many rotary machines doing this, it does require a great deal of agility, unsurprisingly, because as you're going through the pirouette maneuver, then you are at the same time having to adjust for all the wind drift that is going on as well. And therefore, there's a fair amount of footwork as well as handiwork going on the control column itself. At all this phase, of course, the pilot in this helicopter is solo, so he's got to keep an eye on all the T's and P's, as we call them in the business. So there's a fair amount of dexterity, but Matt Roberts, huge amount of experience on this. He's got about 4,000 hours now, and he started as an air crewman in the Army Air Corps, as many of our pilots do. And in fact, unique in Army aviation, unlike the other two services, we actively encourage soldiers to apply for positions for training as a pilot. Now, and you no doubt hear a little bit more about that as well during the Apache display, but it's one of the things the British Army is very proud about, that it is all-inclusive in that respect. And it will often take soldiers who are absolutely no past background in aviation whatsoever, and will turn them into a frontline pilot. And it's amazing what a life-changing experience this can be. Now, the aircraft itself went into service in 1963, and this particular example, it remains exactly the same as it was purchased. and has not changed whatsoever. There's one slight bit of technological advance in there, which is what we call a Mode S transponder, and that's a sort of C and D scene radar-derived piece of technology. But other than that, it's exactly as it was. The only thing we haven't got on it today are the examples of the SS-11 missiles that it would have used in the anti-tank role. And that was derived essentially to develop things you may well have heard of an expression called hell arm, when we were preparing for the hordes of Russian tanks to come across the mighty German plains. And I'm delighted to say that this may well have played a part in preventing that sort of scenario happening. Now, Matt would have spent a good 1,500 hours or so of his 4,000 on this particular machine, not just in Germany, but of course in Northern Ireland, where it was used not just in the communications role, but of course in terms of counter-terrorist work and surveillance work. Very, very busy all the time during those difficult years across the water. As well as that, it featured heavily in the Falklands campaign in 1982 and was used heavily in the Kazibek role, with many army pilots at the time receiving awards for the incredible work that they did during that time. The great success of it was that it's what we call a soldier-proof aircraft. It looks and feels robust. It's got relatively moderate technology on board, and it's actually quite hard to break. This particular machine. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, of course, as I say that, but it really is quite tremendous in terms of its serviceability and its commitment to operations, both hot and high, dusty, wet, in all sorts of locations. It's been embarked on aircraft carriers and a variety of other maritime vessels. Now, before the advent of SS-11, of course, the pilots in the early days wouldn't have had any armament, but still were used in the close support observation roles up and down the front line of conflict. And without any radar or thermal imaging to actually help them in any way see over the hill, the pilot had to use his own eyeballs, and it took a significant amount of courage and ingenuity to relay that information then back to the commander on the ground. The aircraft are now embedded, this particular one, along with all the others on the static display today, they're embedded now within a charitable trust. And that is because, sadly, the MOD withdrew support for the Army Historic collection that we were running up until a few years ago. And now we are endeavouring to keep these venerable machines in the air through a volunteer pilot force, all made up of ex or currently serving Army Air Corps pilots. All the aircraft are kept at Middle Wallop. And of course, we would very much appreciate your support. It's perhaps as a connection with your family. It's been a pleasure today hearing so many family members talking about their parents and grandparents or uncles and aunts who worked in campaigns some 50 or 60 years ago. Again, Matt's now bringing it back into reasonably medium hover, and you can almost feel that he's got a decent amount of power to play with in this scenario. The aircraft, of course, replaced the Sioux, which in turn replaced the Skeeter. The Sioux was an excellent observation helicopter, but sadly didn't have the power requirements to really make it appropriate at the front line. So that is Matt. They're just...
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the 2016 Attack Helicopter Display Team.